Hey friends, what if Naruto was trapped by Pyrrha movie? It was a peaceful evening with the sun setting behind few mountains, its reddish-orange rays illuminating the sky as the clouds moved lazily ever so slightly in the cold breeze. The broken moon was faintly visible in the corner of the sky before it could reward the remnants remaining with its glorious side as time would progress. Two nevermores screeched as they flew in the sky. Grims were normally deleterious creatures, but with no humans left near in their vicinity, even they were allowed to roam the endless sky peacefully before some odd human catches their attention again. Only the flapping of wings was heard as its large feathers allowed its huge body to roam in the sky, with its predator eyes scanning the area beneath for any signs of life. That was when it happened. It was calm at first, then there was a spark. Before either of the Nevermore could react, a lightning had erupted from somewhere and struck down one of them, scorching it to crisp, but that was just the starter from the nature. Then all hell broke loose, bringing in the main course. Something, or someone had broken the delicate boundary between space and dimension, bringing with it the full fury of the nature, a rift in dimension so to speak. The surrounding air got heated up to an unbelievable amount of temperature as an explosion burst through shortly after, the clouds moving away from the vertex and spinning around it. The heated air, along with the normal one, moved in tandem and circles due to the difference in pressure before a tornado formed with a huge epicenter. The land was lucky, as this tornado wasn't looking like it would reach the land and eventually die out in mid-air. Out of the high spinning whirlwinds, two light sources emerged. These two light sources were apparently meager in comparison to the storm that had taken place, but it looked like the source of it was two humans. One was purple, while the other was golden in light, as the figures proceeded to fall freely under the gravity without much resistance. Normally, these two humans were supposed to die as they land with a huge thud on either side of a small stream that managed to survive the storm. No human could survive a fall like that, no matter what his semblance or healing abilities might be, but these two weren't normal by standards. You could classify them as demigods given their current level. Uzumaki Naruto was on his knees, panting quite heavily, whilst his blue cerulean eyes stared at his friend, his brother in arms with a half-open lidded eyes. His face is covered by bruises, burnt marks and purple swelling on his cheeks. The young man has blonde spiky hair and 6 birthmarks like whiskers. 3 on each cheeks, and his forehead is covered by the metal pallet of the headband of his village. His body hurt like hell. His clothes tattered beyond recognition, as his once trademark range jumpsuit has been replaced by the fishnet the shinobi wore under. The only remaining clothing which was left was his black pants, but even that was having multiple holes in it. Naruto clenched his hand into a fist as it remained on his knees. He could feel the pain in his body, but he ignores them. I won't let you end what we have achieved in this war together. The Shinobi Alliance, everything, everyone, the sacrifices they made are for the peace of the world. This is not the old era anymore, Sasuke. Whether you like it or not, the only thing we can do is moving forward and keep the memories of the past in us. Sasuke glared at his friend, the only obstacle left in his path to revolution. With teeth gritted and lips clenched tightly, the raven head could feel the frustration growing in him, but he remained calm as he struggled to stand up. Naruto steadied himself, trying his best not to fall on his back before he rose from his crouching position. Then the blonde dashed forward despite the aches all over his body. Sasuke released a growl as he readied himself, however he wasn't expecting when 2 plumes of smokes appearing beside him. His eyes widened in surprise before everything became a blur as the clone sent the Uchiha sailing into the air. Sasuke clenched his lips, and from the corner of his eyes he saw Naruto leap into the air, ready to pummel him into the ground. However, Sasuke won't let it happen, as he quickly followed the blonde's movement with his Sharingan, and the sound of flesh meeting flesh reverberated in the air before falling to the ground. Damn you, Sasuke cursed the blonde through his panting, as he could feel the exhaustion slowly catching up to him. The sound of bird chirping then echoed through the valley as its blue colored and lightened the growing darkness. Naruto took notice of this, but he was too late as Sasuke thrust his hand forward for the decisive blow. Naruto's eyes widened at first, but he immediately gripped Sasuke's hand tightly, confusing the Avenger. Poof. Sasuke's eyes widened before he felt a presence coming from his left. Before he could react, Naruto already punched him in the face, sending the Raven teen sailing across the air before falling to the ground a couple meters away from the panting blonde-haired shinobi. That won't be enough to take me down, fool. Naruto wheezed out with a grin adoring on his face that seemed to annoy the Uchiha to no end. The blonde's grin then fell as he gathered chakra on the palm on his hand, forming the Rasengan before charging forward. Sasuke tried to move but to no avail. He was too slow to stand before quickly rising his arms in X position. But what happened next amused him for a slightest moment as he watched Naruto fall face first. The Rasengan was wasted away as it dug deep into the earth, sending chunk of dirt and dust away. The raven-haired took this chance as he stood up and charged forward, raising his feet and kicked Naruto right in the face, sending him a couple meters away, causing him to fall on his butt with blood trailing down his lips. Ugh, that hurt, the blonde thought, feeling the pain coming from his lower jaw. Sasuke didn't waste any more time as he charged forward once again with his fist rising to the air, but the moment he got near Naruto, the blonde used the palm of his hand, clenching Sasuke's face tightly, blocking his sight before the Uchiha's fist connected to the Uzumaki, hard. Naruto could feel the pain as he gobbled out the blood out of his mouth before another hit him in the face, again and again. The last Uchiha was now on top of Naruto, as he did the rhythm of punching the blonde again and again, as the sound of flesh pounding flesh resonated the air. Naruto clenched his right hand whilst his left grabbing a hold of Sasuke's collar, then pulling him closer to him, as the blonde raises his head and head-butted Sasuke, sending him to the ground on his back, before kicking him in the chest that sent Sasuke a couple meters away from where he was before. The Uchiha could feel the migraine and the pain from the impact with blood trailing down from his forehead. A groan escaped from his lips before he rose from his current position to see that Naruto doing the exact same thing. They then run towards each other with fists raised in the air. Naruto. Sasuke. Their shouts travels across the wind as they began exchanging punches and kick by engaging each other in close combat. The sound of flesh hit flesh reverberate in the valley as the sun above them, slowly setting down with the shimmering color of red across the horizon, before pair of eyes watching through the thick trees. No one dared to make a move as they just watched the pair punching and kicking without rest, before they stopped frantically when they fall together on their knees. Naruto's fist is on his forehead whilst Sasuke's is on his abdomen. They both panted quite heavily with a half-open lidded eye staring at each other. Do you really think why you could win while Im's still around? Naruto chuckled softly as the air around them shifted to those of a heavy atmosphere, but they paid no mind as Sasuke glared towards his obstacle. No, that is why Naruto, I've gathered enough chakra, so let's end this battle quickly as possible. Kurama reprimanded him as the blonde nodded. However, what happened next astonished Kurama as the chakra he gathered for Naruto was being absorbed by Sasuke, who had a serious look. Sasuke Naruto gritted his teeth before he fell down to the ground. The headband knotted around his forehead has fallen to just right above him. Sasuke stood up as he channeled chakra to his hand and formed the Chidori. Goodbye my one and only friend. Then he thrust his hand forward with Naruto still on the ground as the blonde stared at the metal of his head protector, showing the reflection of Sasuke. He then noticed the slight weakening of Sasuke's visual prowess as the blonde rises from his prone position with a fist raised in the air. Sasuke thought of it as nothing before his eyes widened in surprise as he felt the exhaustion finally catching up to him, resonating in his left eye. This caused the Sharingan to revert back to black orbs, causing him to lose balance of his footing as he lost his balance. Naruto's fist connected on his lower jaw hard, sending him flying towards a nearby hill, creating a large crater as Sasuke could be seen on the wall with blood dripping down from his lips. Naruto panted quite heavily as he could feel himself struggling to stand up. Kurama released a growl, gaining the attention of his host. I do not like this, not at all. Naruto, this will be your last shot. Think before you act, do not rush it. Whatever you do, win this battle and then run. I don't think. It's Kurama stopped for a frantic moment whilst watching Naruto thrust his fist towards him with a smile on his face, that silencing Kurama. I know, thank you Kurama, your rest is well deserved. Kurama frowned but nodded as he then thrust his own fist towards Naruto, then the water beneath them ripples as they released a soft laughter. Don't lose to him Naruto, the Kyuubi no Kitsune whispered softly as he was being pulled into the realm of Morpheus, with the last thing he saw was Naruto walking away, further and further into the darkness, and then everything blackened. Over and over Sasuke came out of the crater as he planted his feet into the floor, and over and over. Why don't you just give up and let me cut you down? Sasuke yelled desperately with his eyes glaring at Naruto, who was now standing on his ground. Naruto narrowed his eyes but said nothing, ignoring the glare from his fellow teammate with just a small smile. I can't do that, Naruto trailed off, the small smile on his face widened. Cause him your one and only friend. This response seemed to tick the Uchiha to no end as he clenched his fists, finally releasing a sigh to calm himself. He raised his left hand, then lightning slowly cackled as his right burst in blue-colored. Sasuke stared at his Chidori before his right eye started bleeding as black flames circulating within the lightning. They stood in silence before Sasuke jumped down, the suit followed by Naruto, who sent chakra to his feet before leaping upward into the air with his right hand showing the palm as the Rasengan slowly being formed. Chidori. Rasengan. Their techniques collided against each other, creating a large dome of black and blue as it began battling for dominance, sending lightning to the ground as the sound of thunder reverberating in the forest, destroying everything below it with the wind following suit as it destroyed every tree that was on its way and killing anything nearby it. All the ground beneath them shattered into dust the moment it made contact, leaving nothing but a deep crater with a large diameter. The cold wind breeze gently blowing on his face, startling him for a moment as he snapped his eyes open to see the beautiful blue sky with the sun slowly making its entrance as golden light scattering across the horizon, slowly bestowing the land with its warmth ray. The sound of birds chirping could be heard nearby and a slow calm breathing beside him. Naruto eyes widening in realization as he remembered what happened, though he suddenly winced in pain, sensing the pain coming from his right arm. It seems you have woken up, Sasuke whispered softly as another breeze blowing upon them, sending a chill running down to their spine. It has taken you some time but I was relieved. Naruto blinked at that but said nothing. Why would you go that far as to risk your life and get in my way? Sasuke told him with a sad smile on his face as he turned his head to look at the blonde. I gained the power to enter the darkness by severing my bonds, and naturally everyone tried to cut their ties with me as well at some point, but you have never attempted to cut me off. Naruto TT, tell me why are you so fixated with me? Is that even a question, or are you trying to play a joke on me? Naruto questioned, chuckling by the end of his sentence when he saw the scowl on Sasuke's face. Sometimes I wonder who the biggest idiot here is. Just tell me. Be fine, I thought you already understand it by now. Naruto sighed with a laughing died down as he closed his eyes for a moment before smiling towards the last Uchiha. Because you're my friend, unlike them everyone back then doesn't understand me, and beside whenever I see you take on stuff and get all messed up it hurts me. Staring at the blonde from the corner of his eyes, Sasuke clenched his lips, no words escaping from him, as he just stared back. He knew that because he felt the exact same thing, sorrow. Naruto, Hey, do you remember how I used to be treated by the villagers? Naruto asked, suddenly interrupting the Raven teen from saying whatever he has in his mind as the blonde averted his gaze to the beautiful sky. Back then everyone despised me, I hate that, and yet I didn't give up, all thanks to Iruka-sensei. I guess, without Iruka-sensei I would have taken the same path as you. That is why I wanted to save you, because to me you're more than a friend but a brother I looked up to. Sasuke his clenched left hand, his black onyx eye averting down to the blonde's missing arm. I see, but unfortunately I cannot go back there. Konoha is nothing but my prison. They will hate me, they will lock me away, and they will seal my chakra to the point I won't even be able to draw them. Naruto, please just end my life now. You will be known as the savior of the world, the child of prophecy and the hero, while I will be the villain in the end. That suited me more than leading a good life. Naruto grinned before it widened into a smile as the sound of laughter reverberating through the forest. What so funny? Ain't nothing, I guess I have to hit that thick head of yours a couple more time. Naruto smirked as the laughter died down. I'm sure we can work something out. You did after all help us win the fourth great shinobi war. I'm not sure with the cages and the Biju, what makes you think that the peace you keep talking about will last forever? Hell, wars happened because of their existence. My world will be perfect but you always have to ruin it. Naruto pondered over it for a while before he sent a grin at Sasuke and at the same time ignoring the last sentence coming from his friend. Not forever, because there will be a time when a hero needs to rise to protect what he stands for, family, friends and village. Beside, the world you spoke of isn't perfect either. There needs to be a balance in this world between dark and light, just like the yin and yang release. Instead of making a target of yourself and becoming the enemy of the world, why don't you work by my side? You will be like the Shadow Hokage, just like Itachi, and together we shall be the symbol of peace. Hey, even now Sasuke sighed as he could feel the sadness wash off all over him as it was replaced by regrets. The Raven teen quickly turned his head away, hoping the blonde won't see the lone tear trailing down from his left eye, but failed to do so as Naruto took notice of it. Thank you, Naruto, for everything this time. I admit you win. Naruto just smile, he would have retorted if not for the Kurama's words. A sigh escaped from his lips, gaining the attention of his fellow teammate. Say, have you taken notice that we're not at the final valley anymore? The blonde questioned the Raven teen, who nodded in agreement. Like on cue, suddenly the calm atmosphere around them became heavy as the ground beneath them trembling, then a black silhouette figure shot upward. As a fierce roar broke out the forest, sending shockwaves that destroyed everything that remained of the surrounding area, causing both shinobi to be in high alert as their eyes staring at the creature flying above them. It had enormous wings taking a shape of a large bat-like wings and a pair of legs and a tail. The creature had black skin with white bone-like spines along its body, including an external skull, rib cage, and rows of dorsal spikes. It also had 3 bony spikes on its tail and large claws on its hind legs. Its skull has a pair of large prominent horns and 6 yellow red eyes glaring at them with so much hatred. It then opened its jaw, showing the teeth extending down along the creature's neck beyond its skull as it released another roar. Is that a dragon? Sasuke questioned in curiosity rather than surprise, as he wondered what causes such creature to be so aggressive and would try to attack them in the time of the day, especially when they hadn't done a single thing to attract it. Wait, never mind. The Uchiha has a smirk on his face and sending a glance towards his fellow brother, whom returned with a nod, but finding it hard for them to rise from their prone position. The dragon just watched at their struggles, debating whether to kill them, whether they stand or flee after witnessing their power a couple of minutes ago, but it decided to go with the former. Air weakened, and it is exactly the reason why it made an appearance in the first place. But why the hesitation? Perhaps that's the only question circulating in the mind of the black-skinned dragon for a couple of seconds. Both teens winced in pain as they could feel the pain coming from their missing arm as the close wound began to open up with blood slowly dripping down. Sasuke took one last glance at Naruto, even in their current state, and even though they're handicapped by a large margin, he was surprised to see the confidence in his eyes. Naruto will always be Naruto, he is perhaps the only shinobi that doesn't know fear and would not hesitate to put down a threat. Do you think we should kill it or just run and leave it alone? He asked the whiskered teen that looked at him for a couple of seconds, noticing what Sasuke meant, but he ignored it. I don't know, unlike any other creatures, this one is tainted with evil. It feels similar to the vile presence of the Juubi beside you. Already know my answer. Sasuke's eyes narrowed at the mention of the Juubi, but nodded his head nonetheless as a soft sigh escaped from his lips. If that's the case, killing it is, but we have to make it quick and find ourselves a shelter and tend our wounds, Sasuke concluded with seriousness in his voice as the blonde nodded his head, an excited yet tiring smile appeared on his face. Yeah, let's do this, Naruto exclaimed as he gathers the natural energy around them in a span of 1 minute as an orange mascara appearing on the lids of both eyes, vertical blue turned horizontal with the orange pigment. Sasuke closed his eyes, a small smile adoring his own face. Through the pain from his arm he snapped his eyes opened, showing the eternal Mangekyou Sharingan blazing to life as he took a stance. Let's. The dragon seeing this roared, its shockwaves were stronger than before as it knocked them off of their footing for a while before they regained their feet, planting them on the ground with chakra. Naruto sent an annoyed glare towards the dragon as the blonde noticed black liquid started dripping down from its body. The liquids then began to take shapes ranging from lizard, bear and wolf-like creatures. The lizard-like creatures has no forelimbs, only hind limbs. Naruto took notice of the hind limbs are dual-clawed and inverted at the knee joints, heavily akin to an ostrich. Behind its body were tails, gently swaying in the air as its head was covered by white markings with red eyes glaring at them, like the dragon and the creatures surrounding around them. It had a dark black color body with the only difference being the shape. The wolves had a muscular body, standing on their hind legs. It had a bone-like mask covering its face with red markings, a similar pattern which they took notice. The wolves have bone-like spikes protruding from their arms, back and knees. Their hands and feet were also tipped with long, sharp white claws. The bear-like creatures has a similar appearance as the wolves, with black fur and bony spikes on their backs and arms, as well as white bone-like masks covering their faces with red detailing, but were much larger and stockier. Sasuke narrowed his eyes at this as he looked at Naruto, who nodded in return. Taking the one on the left, the blonde stated as he brought his fist to the air towards the nodding Sasuke as their fists bumped and a smile appearing on each of their faces as they pushed chakra down to their feet and dashed forward in a blur of orange and purple. The dragon roared once again, sending a shockwaves that would knock the both of them off their feet, if not for chakra, as it flapped its wings before descending down from the air. The action was followed by the rest of the creatures, as their roars could be heard from miles away. Then everything became a blur, as the fight was more like a massacre. Naruto panted quite heavily, he could feel his vision distorting, and the pain coming from his missing arm isn't any better either. The blonde was currently surrounding in a pile of bodies. 1 minute it took them 1 minute to destroy the black creatures, but what he found surprising is that instead of dying like a normal animals or living being, they just disintegrated into piles of dust. The blonde Jinchuriki averting his gaze from the ground to Sasuke, who was pretty much in a similar position though much worse than the blonde himself. I don't like this, not at all, Sasuke growled in between, panting as he could feel his breathing becoming heavier. Their chakra was at a minimum even if they wanted to run away. He doubted that the dragon would stay and flee despite the injuries it receives. Sasuke sent a glare towards the dragon. Despite losing a wing, it roared out in anger as piles of black liquids oozing out of its body, dripping down onto the dragon, taking the same shapes as the animal-like creatures they had killed. The Uchiha took another glance at the dragon, a frown on his face as he saw it regenerating the missing wing, but it didn't share the resemblance of its old wing. Sasuke, Naruto called out, gaining the attention of the raven teen, as the Uchiha averted his gaze to look at Naruto with nothing but curiosity. This might be our only way. They're weak, yes, but unlike them we're battered, minimum in chakra, and missing an arm isn't any better either, Yakno. The last Uchiha wolf chuckled at the little joke. If they're not in this kind of situation, but knowing the look on the face of one fucking Uzumaki Naruto, he knew not to answer as he nodded with a frown spreading on his lips. What do you have in mind? Sasuke managed to rasp out as the blonde smirked. You cover my back, Naruto stated as he elaborated the plan in his mind. My chakra is not unlimited, but fortunately, thanks to the natural energy, it is enough to give us one shot to use the Futon. Rasenshuriken wind, release. Spiraling shuriken, and then we can make our way to wherever we have in mind. Sasuke clenched his lips. No. Oh, come on, duckbit. Sasuke eyebrow twitched as he scowled. What's the drawback? I might lose consciousness. Are you sure? Yup. Like really sure. Fuck damn it Sasuke, yes I am certain. The Raven teen sighed as he nodded, he knew he shouldn't doubt the blonde but he did. Naruto is the only connection he have to his past and someone that he could share his pain with. Losing Naruto might actually break him apart and that is not something he wished to see. After all, they're brothers and worrying is something he should feel now, which he is. I'll cover you. Naruto grinned, ignoring the fact that the dragon glared at them for being ignored. The wolves howled to the air as they charged forward, followed suit by the growling of the bear and the snarling of the lizard. The dragon however just watched as it sensed danger, its yellow-red eyes piercing at the Raven teen as it took down countless of its creation with ease. Perhaps for the second time of its life it finally learned fear, having been reprimanded of the past, those men in white with strange eyes, and the tremendous prowess that possessed. Fueton. Rasen Shuriken. Wind Release. Spiraling Shuriken. Sasuke stared at the blonde from the corner of his eyes, a look of amusement appearing on his face, especially at the frown on Naruto's face. Are you sure that's a Rasen Shuriken? It's small for fuck's sake. Oh shut up will you? Naruto growled through panting, feeling the tick marks appearing on the back of his head. Sasuke just chuckled in return as the Uchiha crouching down to the ground, extending his left hand sending lightning to the ground, paralyzing the creatures from its movement. Now? Okay. Naruto nodded as he threw the small version of Rasen Shuriken spiraling shuriken towards the creatures. The blonde then loses his balance as he submits to the land Morpheus, but Sasuke appeared beside him as his arm managed to catch the blonde in time. Then his Rinnegan rippled before they disappeared without leaving a trace. The enormous dragon sent one last glare at where they stood before sensing the approaching danger as it uses its feet as a support to jump onto the air before flapping its wings as it fly into the air, fleeing from the clearance. The black creatures has their eyes watching the technique spinning towards them, then the Rasen Shuriken stretched in its four-pointed star-shaped, forming a blade, cutting everything it touched before it exploded in a dome of minuscule razor wind blades, leaving nothing behind, not even ashes. The sound of footstep reverberates through the hallway as Naruto and Sasuke silently walking behind a woman's back. Her name is Gilda Goodwitch. The woman has an appearance of a middle-aged woman that has very light blonde hair tied back in a bun with a curl hanging down the right side of her face. Her eyes are bright green and she wears thin ovular glasses. She has dangling teal earrings that match the hanging pendant on her collar. The woman wears a white long-sleeved, a pleated top that has a wide keyhole neckline and gauntlet cuffs that flare in pleats at the wrist. Her lower body is covered by a black high-waisted pencil skirt with bronze buttons and black-brown stockings. She wears black boots with brown heels and a cape that attached to the top of her right foot, and on her wrist is strapped a golden wristwatch. It's fortunate we finally able to find you, Uzumaki Naruto and Uchiha Sasuke, the woman said with a small smile spreading her lips after she spoke whilst looking at them from the corner of her eyes. They made a stop in front of the door with her left hand reaching down to the doorknob and opened the door. Naruto and Sasuke grunted, who old? The former teen, Uzumaki Naruto, is wearing a black cloak. Underneath this, he wears an orange sweatshirt with black stripes, black leather long pants and shinobi sandals. He has 6 birthmarks like whiskers, 3 on both cheeks and tan skin with spiky blonde hair that has bangs falling down to his cheeks as it crisscrossed in the air when they walked. Beside him, Uchiha Sasuke wears a tattered light brown poncho with bandages wraps around his ankles. Underneath the poncho, he wears black high-collared shirt, a midriff-exposing flak jacket, and light blue pants with similar colored shinobi sandals. We have a proposal for you both, something in which we hope that we can come to understand one another, so please, do sit down and let's talk. She mentioned her hand inside, but they halted their step. Do not worry yourself, we know who you are and what you are capable of, that is why you are here. Oh really? Like, how much do you know about us? Naruto asked with an amusing smile on his lips, but the look she gave him shut his mouth straight away as the smile became a frown. Oh well, do you guys have ramen? He asked as it was him who was first sitting on the vacant chair with Sasuke following soon afterwards. We do not have ramen, but fortunately, we have some cookies. She suggested as Naruto waved his hand in a no-way motion. I see, well rest assured, this won't take long. The last time Atlas Academy tried to recruit us Winter Schnee now knows shame, Sasuke commented with eyes glowered at her. The look in his eyes caused Gilda to start sweat trailing down her left cheek as her spine chilled. Had the temperature of the room just dropped several degrees, or was that the presence of the Uchiha's work? Atlas was the first to try, and that seems to be a mistake as the news of Winter Schnee humiliation went around the kingdoms like a river. Sasuke smirked, taking notice of the expression on her face as he then continued, if it's about joining the academy, especially Beacon, then I'm sorry, there's no way we would. Ma Sasuke, let's just hear them out first, K. Naruto interrupted with a smile that made Sasuke smirked and returned, and then we'll do the humiliation later. Violation and humiliation won't be needed here, Mr. Naruto and Mr. Sasuke, thank you very much, a masculine voice stated from the shadow. A man emerged with a mug of coffee in the grip of his hand, whilst the other is gripping a cane. The man has brown eyes staring at them, from their faces down towards their missing arm. A smile on his lips as he then took the remaining vacant seat opposite the boys, with Gilda standing behind him. The man has an appearance of a middle-aged man with tousled silver hair and thin brown eyes with black eyebrows. He wears shaded glass spectacles and a small purple cross-shaped pin on the cowl around his neck. The man wears an unzipped black suit over a button vest and green shirt. He also wears black trouser shoes and long dark green pants. Do you know who I am? The man asked, leaning over the table examining the two boys which had caused such disruption across the kingdoms. I don't. Naruto chirped as he brought his hand up. That made Sasuke chuckled. The Uchiha still has a small smile on his face as he eyed the man once before looking back at Naruto. His name is Ozpin, Professor Ozpin. The Uchiha nodded his head as he then averted his gaze back to stare at the man for a while before settling back to the table, but if he had looked for more than a second, he would have noticed the small amusement in the man's face. The Warriors of Darkness is perhaps only names from the local towns, a title you both received from the Grimm. You have both slain, all except one, a Grimm dragon, Ozpin said, now fully catching the attention from both Sasuke and Naruto, the former scowling whilst the blonde pondered how the man had known about that. Now Mr. Naruto, to answer your earlier question about how much we know, the answer would be we know everything, Ozpin said as he paused mid-sentence, taking notes of their expression on their face before continuing. That includes your battles and how you both fell from the sky, including the facts you both tried to kill each other. Perhaps that's leaning more towards you, Sasuke. Ozpin finished, now his eyes staring at the grunted raven-haired teen. Naruto stared at the man for a few seconds before he closed his eyes, pondering for a while if this was some kind of setup, were the two trying to blackmail them to join their academy. Like how much of it do you know? Sasuke suddenly asked. Ozpin noticed that his tone had dropped, becoming severely colder. The last Uchiha has his eyes narrowed at Ozpin, whom reached down his coat pocket taking out his scroll. The man took his time before he turned his device towards them as the tablet showed them the battle of their final clashed, and to the point they battled the Grimm and the Dragon Grimm. That leaves nothing behind after Naruto's Rasen Shuriken. But from the way he sees it, that might not be a Rasen Shuriken, rather another new awesome technique that Naruto was still in the process of naming. You were there, correct? Sasuke asked as the silver-haired man nodded his head. Professor Ozpin has witnessed a portion, or perhaps a surface of their power, hence he planned to help them. In their current state, a month ago was perhaps impossible in the eyes of Beacon's headmaster, but that seemed to be wrong as they fled just in time before hell took its place. Now young men, may I know where you both learned how to do all this? Ozpin curiously asked the duo, however instead of an answer they received, it was an utter silence. He waited for another 2 minutes, but still the boys ignored him. A sigh escaped from Ozpin's lips. It seems only time will tell him as to how they fell out of the sky with injuries to the point they tried to kill each other, thus losing an arm in the process. Like Gilda stated, it took us a while to locate the both of you, we're merely following through your tracks, and it is fortunate we found you here in the city of Vale. I see. Sasuke nodded as he eyed the blonde for a moment. Naruto stared at Sasuke's onyx black eyes before he nodded. Naruto shifted his gaze over to Gilda and Ozpin, who took notice of the sudden change of atmosphere. Everything became cold once more. Like I mentioned before, we came here in peace. We are only here to have a simple and rational discussion with you both, Ozpin assured the teens, whilst narrowing his eyes as he continued speaking. It's a shame to see the talent you both have possessed to be wasted without a proper education. And who told you we're not educated? Naruto asked, as the blonde folded his arm underneath his chest, though by doing so made him a bit uncomfortable. He was still getting used to having only one arm. Thus, comes the same question, I would like to know where the both of you learned to fight like this. Naruto hummed for a moment, a small smile appeared on his face. We're from a faraway island, there we lived in a village, and our sensei Jiraiya taught us how to fight, and in his defense, his purpose was so we could defend ourselves from dangers such as the Grimm and people like the White Fang, Naruto said, his tone laced with sadness. I see. Ozpin nodded. The way the blonde said it doesn't feels like he was lying. However, Ozpin has lived long enough to know about made-up stories, and right now, he could tell that the story was true, yet it wasn't the whole story. Ozpin knew that Naruto was mixing half-truths and half-lies into his story. Naruto could sense Ozpin's doubt. The blonde-haired shinobi sent Sasuke a glance as the raven teen discreetly nodded his head. Professor Ozpin and Glinda took notice of their movements as the two boys readied themselves, the blonde running towards the door and Sasuke channeling chakra to his feet as they moved in a blur of orange and purple. It was a span of 5 seconds before Naruto could even run past the table as Ozpin had intercepted his movements. Naruto's fist clashed against Ozpin whilst Sasuke was intercepted by Gilda. They were surprised, but showed nothing other than a chuckle escaping from their lips. It seems holding back here was a mistake. We assure you the only person that knows about this is me, Ozpin informed them as both teens stared at him for a moment, pondering whether or not to continue to listen to the old man further. We do not wish to come here to fight you, since we've come here weaponless Naruto, Sasuke. The pair of shinobi looked at each other once, wanting for a confirmation which the blonde nodded as the raven teen averted his gaze back to Ozpin. Very well then we will hear you out, but one wrong move and I will end you both, Sasuke grumbled as they walked back and sit down. Gilda and Ozpin stare at each other and mentally sighed in relief. Then it'll make it quick, I would like the both of you to join Beacon Academy, Ozpin said with a smile that made Sasuke glare at him. The professor of Beacon then continued, you will study for 4 years under us before you fully become huntsman. Huntsman is merely a title, we're capable of defeating the Grimm by ourselves. Yes I noticed that, that's probably the reason why Atlas Academy tried to recruit you in the first place, because to them, the both of you are an enigma, Ozpin nodded, humming for a while before continuing. But I have my own reason a failsafe perhaps, I want you to protect both sides Remnant and Beacon Academy from any threats and dangers when the time comes. Gilda silently watching Ozpin and the teens interacted. While she didn't like the idea of having 2 students without a history or background to go on, she wouldn't question Ozpin's motives. Ozpin did have a habit of being prepared for any possible event. Like you I believe the world is currently a danger, Ozpin continued, we're the Remnant we have no memories of the past, except stories that continues to evolve each time we adults retell them to future generations, and I believe there might be a time when we all must make a drastic decision to end all this madness. We work well together, we don't need to join some stupid academy that thinks they're capable of protecting the world, Sasuke stated with a glare on his face that made Ozpin sigh, and beside we don't care about Remnant, this world is nothing but a settlement, an inconvenience. Ozpin's eyes narrowed at the tone of the raven-haired boy, curious and overall worried as to exactly the meaning behind Uchiha Sasuke's words, but instead of commenting anything he was mentally debating with himself. At least we tried, Ozpin thought with a sigh escaping from his lips as his brown eyes went back and forth from Sasuke to Naruto, might as well hope they won't humiliate us. Naruto glanced at Sasuke, a smile appeared on his face before he spoke his opinion. Unfortunately, I disagree with you there Sasuke, the blonde began, startling the 3 of them. Yes, even Sasuke was surprised. It is unfortunate that the world we knew, cared and loved, is slowly going into its turning end. The humans, Grimm, Faunus, these are merely words rolled in the tongue of these people. We humans and Faunus came in different features. Isn't that the same thing as humans where half of us has white skin and the other has much darker one? The blonde said in an amusing tone as he continued speaking. Humans have lived for long enough, we have fought for what is right, and some of us even fought for what is wrong. Even now we're still divided into 2, hatred being the only thing that differ us from each other. When man learns to love, they must know the burden of pain and losing the one they love. Unfortunately love breeds hatred and hatred breeds wars, the cycle of hatred in the world. Any world never ends. Linda stared at the blonde surprised and overall saddened. This Naruto boy, someone Wo's name had spread across the 4 kingdoms, bring fear alongside it, a teenager in his own right, spoke as if he had experienced which many people go through their entire lives not witnessing or experiencing for themselves. Glinda had dabbled in her own version of love and loss. As had her colleague and longtime friend Ozpin, but hearing it from such a young boy, it just didn't sit right with her. She seemed to realize that they both had buried some form of deep emotional scar within themselves, and because of said scar, they tended to avoid trusting others and relied solely on each other. She was broken from her thoughts as Naruto continued his speech. But now even if we're united, there are some of us that are tainted by the hatred, thus what's attracted the creature of Grimm, bringing the existence of man to the brink of extinction, their only savior being the dust that they all used to survive, by subduing to their hatred of Grimm and bringing another war, a war filled with powerful weapons and an unstable energy source. Naruto said amused at himself, not noticing the impact he has to the headmaster and teacher of Beacon, and with that hatred another war began, between the humans and Faunus. There are some continents that are fine with Faunus, but most of the humans still looked at them with rage and hatred, like their very being is a disease just like how I was, but I won't let this discrimination go on even more. The blonde grinned as his hand clenched his fist uncontrollable, recalling the painful memories of his youth. The answer to your offer is a yes, Professor Ozpin. Ozpin hearing that smiled as his hand gripped the mug of coffee before taking a sip. Please, just call me Ozpin. There is no need for formality. The man chuckled as his eyes then averted to the frowning Sasuke. What makes you accept this, idiot? Sasuke growled at his brother. Despite everything they did in the past, he knew that Naruto would have a reason for this, and he wanted to know that now. Discrimination, humans and Faunus, he knew he shouldn't care about any of them since they are not even from here to start with. However, Naruto said, glancing at Sasuke before continuing, in exchange of our service, we want information from you, Ozpin. We want to know everything you know, and anything you don't know about you will find out for us. Naruto smirked, which surprised Sasuke even further. The last Uchiha silently thought it over. The blonde might be dumb at times, but this time Naruto had actually come up with a reasonable plan. It might not be perfect, but they're not too far-fetched from what they wanted, and he could see them getting this sooner than later, one way or another. They wanted answers, and the only way to have that is by siding side with at least a kingdom, something which they refused from the beginning, thinking they could work alone by themselves since together they're unstoppable. However, so far, their journey is all but fruitless. They hadn't found answers, not a fucking single one. What they did find were many more questions, leaving them both frustrated further. Beside, this might be our only way back, Sasuke, Naruto said with a sad smile on his face, before his eyes narrowed at both Ozpin and Gilda. We will have the answer from you, Ozpin and Goodwitch, one way or another. Marvelous. We will see you at the first day of Beacon Academy ceremony in a month then. Ozpin exclaimed as he clasped his hand, something that made Gilda annoyed. These two is apparently plotting something for them behind their back, and that's worrying. However, to see a man like Ozpin wasn't at all visibly concerned with the many unknowns that the two brought to the school, worried her even more. I'm sorry, but I don't think that's an acceptable condition, Gilda interrupted as she sternly looked at them. Information, what kind of information do you seek? Why is it us, since you could have find what you're looking for at Atlas, or alone, since you two have made it quite apparent that you do not play well with others? Sasuke would answer her question if not for Naruto. What else? Grim, the history of Remnant, and the list goes on. Surely that won't be a problem from someone like Ozpin. Naruto grumbled before he thought about it for a while and scowled. Oh, and the moon. Why does it look like that? How did it end? You broken, and every time I looked at it it reminded I just don't like it. Gilda blinked with Ozpin humming in the back. The latter took notice that Naruto has stopped for a moment before ending the sentence. However, time will tell, and Ozpin was a patient man. The past is a mystery, hence we named the world as Remnant. We're just the remnants of the past. We have no real recollection as to why we're here, or as how the world became like the one we're currently living in. That includes as to why there is a shattered moon, Ozpin explained as he hummed once more, then continued. However, if it is information you seek, an answer for your questions, I will give them. I will provide you the things you need. It might take some time to find the right answers, but I assure you, a deal is a deal after all, and I never goes back with my words. That is something I can promise. Ozpin nodded at the two young men with a smile on his face. The silver-haired man stood up from his seat with his hand outstretched towards Naruto. Naruto grinned as he shook them, whilst Sasuke paused for a brief moment, being reluctant at first, but nodded to himself and followed suit after Naruto, firmly shaking the older man's hand. Ozpin simply smiled at the teen before he spoke honestly to the boy. Do not worry, I'm not a man that would turn back his words. I will provide you with answers. But in term of that conditions, you will attend Beacon Academy, working alongside us and this year's student, and when the trouble arise, I want you both to be there to ignite the light in the darkness. Sasuke sighed as he sent the man an understanding look before he switched and glared towards the blonde. Naruto chuckled nervously as he began walking towards the door with Sasuke following behind him. Glinda, who was nearest to the door, grabbed the doorknob and opened it. Her eyes watched both teens disappearing further and further into the darkness of the hallway. The woman's light blonde hair swayed in the air as she quickly averted her head back to Ozpin, the silver-haired man currently enjoying his time, whilst he took another sip from his mug of coffee, with the furious woman behind his back. I don't trust them, she said with a grumpy expression on her face, whilst her eyes glared at the man's back. They're a mystery, Ozpin. They have no recorded past whatsoever. The only thing we know about them is they love slaying Grim for free for those who are in need. The fact you let a pair of assassin entering Beacon is worrying. You tell me, Ozpin chuckled as he twirled his chair alone to look at Gilda in the eyes. You do remember we used to have some kids with bad past, but I know who I picked, and I can assure you, these children that won't do any harm. Besides, I could see them hesitating for a moment, meaning that they are not holding all the cards. They may be a force to be reckoned with, but they are still children. Lost and confused. The light blonde-haired woman curled her lips into a frown as she stared into the man's brown eyes before releasing a heavy sigh. We're lucky they are not evil, but what worries me is what if your plan backfires? Gilda asked with her eyes sternly gaze at him. It won't, I could see it in their eyes. Those boys need something. They need someone to guide them to the right path, and beside their ideal astounded me. They wanted peace more than anything, and that, Gilda, is something we need to assure humanity and Franus alike, to live in peace amongst each other. Ozpin answered with a smile as he leaned back on the chair. Don't you want to see it? See and experience the world where we, humans and Franus, can live in peace amongst each other without the Grim roaming around the world. Uzumaki Naruto is a born leader. I believe one day he will reunite everyone together to fight for what we stands for, freedom and peace. It might be too soon to tell, but I could see it in their eyes. Those boys has the eyes of someone that has experienced warfare, a threat to many, but a greater allies for us. Remember that. 3 weeks passed since then, with 2 weeks left before he could set his foot on Beacon Academy. Uzumaki Naruto is currently walking through the streets of Mistral. His head was covered by the hood of his cloak as he walked around the city with a small frown on his face. It has been an hour and a half since he has arrived in the city. So far so good. Maybe today wasn't a good day since he was lost, stuck within a sea of people, unable to get his bearings. He had stopped for a moment, mainly for looking around his surroundings, with the thundering sound of waterfall here right in the middle of the city of Mistral. Perhaps in his opinion Mistral portrays a mix of Iowa and Kumo, as he noticed that they're surrounded by green hills and the city itself is on top of one. Oh well, he hummed softly underneath his breath as he started walking with his ears, ignoring the sound of "Hey, watch where you're going, prick." It was until he accidentally bumped into someone and fell on top of them that he was brought back to reality. Blue eyes blinking once, twice and finally thrice as he took a moment to imprint the image of her beauty in his mind. Naruto could feel a tinge of red spreading on his cheeks. The girl below him has an appearance if not younger, must be around the same age as he was. The girl has beautiful silky red hair. She wore her red hair in a waist-length ponytail, curled slightly into a loose ringlet. And a light green eyeshadow around the upper corners of her eyes, whilst her vivid green eyes staring back of his blue with utter silence. She was blushing out of pure embarrassment as she took her time to take notice of his appearance. The young man above him was perhaps the definition of handsome. He has blonde spiky hair hiding underneath the hood, and there are 6 birthmarks like whiskers on his cheeks that screamed out adorable to her. Now her melodic tone snapping him out of his thought as the redhead eyes narrowed at him before the blonde released a cough as he silently rises from their prone position. Afterwards he stretched his hand to help her as the redhead accepted him with a small smile on her face, hiding the small blush adoring her cheeks. Naruto stared at her figure. She was taller than him by a couple centimeters and quite muscular in his opinion, compared to the girls he has seen here in Remnant, not counting Sakura mind you. The redhead top consisted of 2 layers. The top layer was a light brown, strapless top split divided vertically with some bronze patterns. It is quite stiff, maintaining its shape without support. This layer also has riveting or small, round embroidery on the sides, indicating heavy stitching. The bottom layer is a low bronze V-neck. The redhead wears an elastic, black A-line miniskirt and brown upper-length gloves on both arms. She wears a red ankle-length drapery that wrapped around her skirt. There was a small circular bronze plate by her right hip opposite 2 pouches with both connected to a belt. The plate bears her shield and spear emblem. She wears a bronze circlet headpiece that could be seen above her ear and under her bangs. A pair of small, green teardrop-shaped emeralds hangs from her circlet on thin chains. She also sported a large bronze gorget around her neck and a bronze bracelet on the upper half of her left arm. She has elaborate bronze greaves that start below her mid-thigh, continuing downwards into her boots, and a pair of cuisses that begin mid-thigh and end slightly above her knees. She also donned a bronze bracer on top of the sleeve on her left arm. Her high heels boots are brown with bronze trim, matching her skirt and sleeves and reach up to mid-calf. But what interests him even more is that red hair of hers that reminded him of his deceased mother. "Hello there. Pyrrha." The redhead greeted him by waving her hand before it rested on the right side of her hips as she smiled at him. That seems to brought him back to reality. "Ah yes, I would like to apologize about bumping into you." The blonde laughed sheepishly, but inside he was mentally cursing Kami at his attractiveness towards girls with similar hair as his deceased mother. "Pyrrha, you have beautiful hair," Naruto complimented with a smile as he extended his hand. Uzumaki Naruto. The girl froze at the mention of her hair. That was the first she heard someone complimented her for her hair. She could feel her cheeks warm up as it was now the same color as her hair. Pyrrha took her moment to calm down, hoping the blonde hand noticed her strange behavior, which he didn't, and that was fortunate for her as she accepted and shook his hand. "So Naruto, where are you from? Is this perhaps your first time here in Mistral?" she asked out of curiosity with the blonde smiling at her, still baffled by the compliment. "I'm from a faraway island and yes, it is my first time here," the blonde replied, his smile turning into a frown. "I was hoping I could participate this year Mistral regional tournament." "Oh. I can show you the way if you wanted to," Pyrrha offered as the blonde nodded. Thank God now he has found himself a guidance and perhaps a friend as well. "What about you? You seem to be busy," he trailed off looking at the armor she sported. "I hope I'm not bothering or interrupting you from anything." Not." Pyrrha shook her head. "I was planning to head for the forest to train, since I'm going to participate the tournament as well." "Ah, that's cool," Naruto nodded in understanding. "So, is this your first time as well?" "Ah." She tilted her head at him before smiling as she shook her head once again, surprised and yet happy at the same time. This is her actual chance to have a friend to know her as Pyrrha instead of the invincible girl. No, this is actually my 4th time." "Wow. Yup, I was hoping to win this year's tournament. That would be a great boost for me to enter Beacon Academy. She smiled with the blonde chuckled at her motivation until they suddenly stopped walking. Pyrrha pointed out her index finger towards the men and women waiting in line. This is the place if you need some help, don't hesitate to call me though, I will wait over there. Okay. I really appreciate that, Pyrrha. Naruto chuckled as he watched her walking away. However, his eyebrow quirked in curiosity when the redhead suddenly found herself surrounded by reporters and fanboys, the latter causing him to have a chill running down to his spine as he could hear them squealing from even here. She's pretty famous. Did I miss something here? He thought to himself with thin lip. Now if he thought about it, everyone was staring at him for some odd reason. Oh well, fear is always a first time for everything. Thanks for watching.